Well, hey guys, we're in Palmetto Cemetery today, and it's here Find a Grave tells us that we can pay our respects to a pioneer black athlete in the state of Mississippi's history, Frank Dowsing Jr. And I guess it's now I need to remind you, if you think you like this kind of content, why don't you boop that like button? I'm still struggling with bronchitis and my voice sounds horrible, but we'll get through it. Well, you know, it was right about here where an old gentleman walked up to me. He's kind of the caretaker of this cemetery and definitely the local historian. And he said Frank is buried in West Palmetto Cemetery just down the road. In fact, he got in the vehicle with me and took me down the road and showed me Frank's grave. So West Palmetto is what you're looking for if you want to pay your respects to Frank Dowsing Jr. It was in September of 1967 where young Jack Reed was playing quarterback for the B team for Tupelo High School. He took the opening snap and tossed the ball to Dowsing. Frank ran the ball 80 yards and the team scored on their very first play, and he didn't play B team very much longer. I believe Frank Dowsing Jr. was the first African American to play football at Tupelo High School. While he had a talent that was incredibly obvious as an athlete, he was one of 5 black students to desegregate Tupelo High School that fall. As I said, his gifts as an athlete were obvious. He earned all conference honors in football, basketball, and track, and he led the basketball team to a state championship. He set a state record in the 100-yard dash. He represented Mississippi at a national 4-H conference, was voted Mr. Versatile by his peers, and he graduated 6th in his class. From the front porch of the home that Frank grew up in, you could see the cotton fields where he labored all day, picking 200 pounds of cotton and making about $2, and right across the street is the church that he attended. And honestly, were it not for the trees, you could probably even see his grave from there. During integration, Tupelo didn't experience some of the riots and some of the problems that other areas experienced, I think largely because of the efforts of Jack Reed Sr. and Jack Jr., the quarterback we mentioned earlier. But they did encounter trouble. One of the female black students that enrolled that fall was told by a particularly hard English teacher that she had given her failing grades simply because she was black. And Dowsing went to a Christmas party at the Reed's house, and some Tupelo High School parents expressed their angst. I know there's no way I can realize or even begin to express to you how hard it must have been to be Frank Dowsing Jr. during this time period in our history. Frank somehow knew how to hold his tongue in spite of the fact that some of his white friends would fight and get bloodied up when opposing fans would make derogatory comments. One night before a track meet at the Holiday Inn in Greenwood, some men threw rocks at the door and threatened to rough up Frank if he showed up at the track meet the next day. Frank's academic and athletic prowess were obvious, but his character traits were appealing to college scouts. Frank was recruited by Alabama, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss, and he knew he would be the first African-American player at any of those schools. Coach Bear Bryant had recruited Dowsing heavily, and most people thought he was headed to the University of Alabama. Coach Shira from Mississippi State sent a young assistant basketball coach named Kermit Davis to Palmetto to meet Dowsing. Davis told Frank it would be great if he went to school in Mississippi because he would be closer to his mother and daddy. Frank Dowsing and a defensive back named Emil Petro and another defensive back named Ken Fars brought to Starkville a great fanfare, and they helped Mississippi State go 6-5 in 1970, and Coach Shira was named SEC Coach of the Year. Dowsing intercepted what would have been a game-winning pass in the end zone against then 10th-ranked Ole Miss, which of course locked up the Bulldogs' upset of their rival. Dowsing was also able to help bridge the racial divide found in Starkville that fall. A student named Michael George badly injured his ankle at an intramural basketball game. Dowsing went with him to the hospital, made sure he got back to his dorm, and when they would see each other in the months that followed, Dowsing would always say hello. In a letter to Dowsing's family after Frank's death, George said, "Frank showed me that no matter where you come from, no matter what color you may be, we are all God's children. Frank changed my heart." In October of 1972, when Frank Dowsing was a senior, his fellow students voted to make him Mr. Mississippi State. This was the first time a black student won any campus-wide election of any kind at Mississippi State. In December of his senior year, Dowsing proposed to his girlfriend, and they were married in Mississippi State's Chapel of Memories. After graduation, he was accepted into medical school in Jackson, Mississippi. He was also drafted by the Eagles. Dowsing enrolled in medical school, and in about 6 months or so, he and his wife were divorced. 3 years later, Frank dropped out of medical school after 3 hospital patients had died within 1 week. Around this time, he reportedly told a friend that he let go his dreams of the NFL because he thought it would be easier to be openly gay in Mississippi than in the NFL. Dowsing went to work with Bell Telephone in the 70s and 80s, eventually settling in California. In the spring of 1990, Frank had grown, tired of his job, and he wanted to be closer to his family. Not long after the drive to Mississippi started, he stopped to get a bite to eat, and he passed out and was taken to a local hospital. Doctors found a brain tumor, which is often associated with HIV. They reached his sister and told her he would only live a few days. Frank didn't die. He became sort of healthy again, and she got him back to Palmetto and moved him into the home where he grew up. He became his aging mother's biggest helper. He enrolled in seminary school and led a fundraising campaign for his church. He helped everyone in the community file their tax returns and taught Sunday school while silently living with HIV. Shortly after Magic Johnson held his 1991 news conference to reveal that he had HIV, Dowsing told his old friend Jack Reed Jr. that he had what Magic Johnson has. Dowsing deteriorated over the next couple of years, and at 11:30 p.m. on July the 11th, 42-year-old Frank Dowsing died. Palmetto Christian Methodist Episcopal Church was overflowing with family and friends at the visitation. His sister said at his funeral, "It seems like people who really make a difference often live short lives. They come, they accomplish a great deal, impact far more lives than some of us who live longer, and then they're gone." Petro, Frank's fellow defensive back and former Mississippi State teammate, was quoted as saying, "He should be in the Mississippi State Hall of Fame, no question about it, not only on the merits of being the first black football player, but just for being an outstanding athlete in football, a model student, and Mr. Mississippi State." And former mayor and quarterback and friend Jack Reed Jr. said of Dowsing, "He was a great man, a groundbreaking pioneer, a superior student and athlete whose grace and courage inspired many of us then and whose memory continues to inspire us today." Well, I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about Frank Dowsing Jr. today. Thank you.